To the outside world, my wife and I were the model couple, 40 years of devotion carved into the lines on our faces. But on her deathbed, Khloe Mitchell gripped my hand, her voice a reedy plea. "Ethan," she whispered, "if there's a next life, please, let me be with Leo." The words struck me like a physical blow. I stared, frozen for a long time. In the end, it was her dying wish. I nodded. Okay. A look of profound relief washed over her face, and only then did Khloe close her eyes for the last time. I never imagined we'd actually get that next life. 40 years earlier, and I'm back. Before I could even process why Khloe had been so certain of this second chance, her voice, sharp and resolute, cut through the tense air of my parents' study. "I won't marry Ethan Grant," she declared, her chin high. "The only person I will ever marry is Leo Vance." I wasn't angry, just curious. This time, without my help, how was she planning to save Mitchell Enterprises from ruin? In my last life, I'd walked away from the Grant family fortune to marry her. I gave up everything. Together, we dragged the near-bankrupt Mitchell Enterprises back from the brink, building it into one of the country's leading public companies. We were the power couple everyone looked up to. The media never touched us. Not a whisper of scandal, not even a public argument. A lifetime of partnership. As she lay dying, I foolishly thought I was the one she couldn't bear to leave. But then, with a final surge of energy, she'd fumbled in the drawer of her bedside table and pulled out a faded photograph of Leo. Her hands, frail and weak, trembled as she held it. A soft, watery tenderness filled her clouded eyes as she gazed at the image of a much younger Leo Vance. I sat beside her, my body rigid, a block of ice. "Ethan," she'd said, her voice thin as paper. "In the next life, please, give your chance to Leo. Let us have the love story we were meant to have." A stone lodged itself in my throat. I couldn't speak. Our children, standing around the bed, urged me to agree. It was her last wish, after all. Khloe's eyes met mine, unwavering. "Ethan, you come from a dynasty. You have a brilliant future ahead of you. But Leo, he has nothing but me." Her voice cracked. "I've been a good wife to you. I've done my duty. All I want is a next life where I don't have to do my duty by him, too." I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the burn of tears. Only then did I finally understand the source of the melancholy that had shadowed her for 4 decades. Leo had been the ghost in our marriage, the unresolved chord in the symphony of her life. "All right," I finally managed to say. "Khloe, I promise you." The words were barely out of my mouth before a satisfied smile bloomed on her tired face. The hand clutching my wrist went limp. Time seemed to stretch and warp. And then a familiar voice pulled me back. My mother's. "Ethan, are you absolutely sure you want to throw away everything for Khloe Mitchell?" I opened my eyes. I was back. 40 years back, on the very day I'd fought with my family, ready to be disowned for the right to marry her. I didn't understand how Khloe could have known this would happen, known enough to make me promise away my own future. Before I could ask, her voice rang out, firm and unshakable. "No," she said, "not to me, but to my parents. I won't marry Ethan. The only man I will ever marry is Leo Vance." Her eyes, filled with a nostalgic, ecstatic light, were locked on Leo, who stood just behind me. His own eyes welled with tears, and he looked down, a shy, grateful smile on his face. It finally clicked. They'd been in love all along. Last time, Khloe had swallowed her feelings and agreed to the strategic marriage to save her family's company. This time, Reborn, she had the courage to choose her heart. She turned to me, her expression softening with guilt. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I know you have feelings for me, but I don't love you. And love can't be a business transaction." She took a deep breath. "Even without the Grant Corporation's help, I know I can save Mitchell Enterprises on my own." Even though I'd suspected the truth for years, hearing her say it aloud was still a gut punch. A phantom ache throbbed around my wrist, right where her dying grip had been. She probably never imagined I'd come back, too. I lowered my gaze and turned to my mother. "Mom, since she doesn't agree, let's just pretend this conversation never happened." I looked back at Khloe, my voice devoid of emotion. "From now on, you're the CEO of your company, and I'm the president of mine. We have nothing more to do with each other. Khloe, I kept my promise. This life, I'm giving you what you wanted. You and Leo, your epic love story. And this time, I won't be there to catch you when you fall." After that day, Leo Vance left my family's service and went with Khloe. He was the son of our longtime housekeeper and, for all intents and purposes, the closest thing I had to a brother growing up. After his mother passed, he'd stayed on, doing odd jobs around the estate. We'd always treated him like family. Before he left, as a gesture of goodwill for old times' sake, I sent him a case of premium small batch bourbon. his absolute favorite. I never expected my kindness to be met with a firestorm of accusations. The Khloe of this life lacked the cool, unflappable grace she'd possessed in our previous one. Reunited with her long-lost love, she was bolder, more reckless. She stormed into my office, her face a thundercloud of fury. "Ethan, I know you're upset that I chose Leo, but that's no reason to try and destroy him." She seethed. "I'll let it go this one time, for the sake of what we almost had. But don't you dare test me again." I stared at her, her rage a palpable force. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. So this was what her great love looked like. 40 years of shared history between us, now worth less than nothing. She spat her threats and was gone before I could even ask what she was talking about, leaving no room for questions or explanations. Half an hour later, a report from my assistant landed on my desk. Leo had been hospitalized with a severe allergic reaction after drinking the bourbon I'd sent him. Confusion knotted in my gut. It was his favorite brand. How could he possibly be allergic? In our last life, he'd snuck countless glasses from that very same reserve. Why would this one time, the one time was a gift from me, be any different? I had my assistant bring the car around. I was on to the hospital to get the bourbon back for testing and to clear my name. But the moment I stepped into his private room, Leo, his eyes wet with tears, sank dramatically to his knees before me. He clutched at the hem of my pants, his voice a pathetic whimper. "Sir, Ethan, I know you love Khloe. I really do. But you can't force these things. We're in love. Please, I'm begging you, don't try to tear us apart." I froze, my mind going blank for a second. Then it all clicked into place. Through his tear-filled, pleading eyes, I saw a flicker of triumph. Leo was setting me up, and the goal, obviously, was to make me look like a monster in Khloe's eyes. As if on cue, Khloe burst through the door, her face contorted in rage. She grabbed my arm, her grip like a vice, her eyes blazing. "Ethan Grant," she growled, her voice a low, menacing rumble. "I just warned you, and you couldn't wait to come here and hurt him again? Do you really think I won't do anything to you?" Looking at this woman, who was staring at me with such visceral hatred, felt like 1,000 tiny needles piercing my heart. I forced the moisture from my eyes, took a deep, steadying breath, and defended myself. I didn't hurt him. I came here to get the bourbon back for analysis. My voice was flat, clinical. "If it really is a problem with the bourbon, I will pay for all damages." Khloe's mouth opened, then closed. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, and her grip on my arm loosened slightly. After 40 years together, she knew my character. But then Leo let out another heart-wrenching sob, and her expression hardened again. "I don't need you here, playing the good guy. I'll have it investigated myself," she said coldly. "And you better pray, Ethan. Pray I don't find out you did this to him on purpose." I gave a curt nod and turned to leave without another word. On my way out, I asked a contact at the hospital to run a full toxicology and allergen panel on Leo's blood work. The phantom bruise on my wrist seemed to pulse. It was a constant reminder. Let her go. This isn't the woman who was your wife for 40 years. Not anymore. The next morning, after a long session with contracts, my assistant brought me the results from the hospital. Leo's allergic reaction had nothing to do with any of the ingredients in the bourbon. The symptoms were a textbook case of ingesting peanuts. Reading the report, it all made sense. Leo's bizarre performance yesterday, the conveniently timed arrival of Khloe. Whether he'd actually eaten peanuts or not didn't even matter anymore. The point was, the bourbon was clean, which meant I was clean. From now on, the two of them were no longer my problem. But just as I was determined to cut all ties, she sought me out. I knew why she was coming. By my calculation, Mitchell Enterprises was now teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Cash flow was a nightmare. Vendors were demanding payment, payroll was due, and bank loans were coming up for collection. The pressure was mounting from all sides. In our last life, the Grand Corporation had injected a massive amount of capital into her company right after our wedding, tiding them over. Then, with my guidance, they landed a huge contract that secured their future. This time, without me, she was adrift. Khloe arrived in my office holding a pizza box from a little hole-in-the-wall place in the village and a cup of iced tea. "I was passing by that old spot," she said, her tone unnaturally casual. "I remembered how much you love their pepperoni, so I grabbed one for you." I just stared at her, silent. I held her gaze until she started to shift uncomfortably, a flicker of anxiety in her eyes. "You must be mistaken," I finally said, my voice flat. "I've never liked greasy food." She flinched as if I'd slapped her, a tremor running through her body. In our past life, at that point in time, it was true. I wouldn't have touched something like that. It was only after we married, when we were stretching every dollar, that cheap, delicious pizza from that specific joint became our go-to-date night treat. After a long, awkward silence, she forced a brittle smile. Oh, well, I must have remembered wrong. But you should try it. It's really good. I waved a dismissive hand. Take it with you. I can't stand the smell. Khloe froze, clutching the pizza box, looking completely lost. The old me would never have been so cruel. No matter how much I disliked something, I would have taken it just to save her face. The old me had molded all my tastes and hobbies to match hers, desperate to find more common ground. It wasn't until her dying breath was spent on another man's name that I realized how foolish I'd been. If there's nothing else, you should leave, I said, my voice cold as ice. You're the CEO of Mitchell Enterprises. It doesn't look good for you to be hanging around the Grant Corporation's offices. My dismissal finally spurred her into action. She stepped closer to my desk, leaning forward, her expression a complex mix of emotions. Ethan, are you doing this because you're angry? Because I chose Leo? I didn't answer. After a moment, she seemed to answer her own question, her eyes fixed on me. You must be furious. She let out a shaky breath. But Ethan, you don't understand. I didn't want to do this. I couldn't miss my chance again. I couldn't live with that regret for another lifetime. I knew what she meant. She couldn't bear the regret of being with me. An entire lifetime with me was her biggest mistake. A faint, humorless smile touched my lips, even as my heart felt like it was being shredded. You don't have to explain anything to me. It's in the past. I don't care anymore. Khloe seemed to deflate with relief. In that case, she said, her voice laced with a tentative hope, why don't we have dinner tonight? It feels like we haven't had a meal alone together in forever. It had been a long time. Not since the day she chose Leo. In our past life, as husband and wife, we ate together almost every night. I learned to cook simple, easily digestible meals because of her sensitive stomach. But I had no desire to perform those meaningless rituals in this life. No, thanks. I'm buried in work. I don't have time to waste. I paused, a question that had been nagging at me surfacing. Her dying wish, her certain. Khloe, how did you know? Just then, her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with Leo's name. We both heard his voice, cheerful and expectant, asking her to dinner. Khloe froze for a fraction of a second, her eyes darting to mine. After a long silence, she accepted his invitation. And the question I was about to ask died on my lips. After that day, I didn't see Khloe for a long time. I heard through the grapevine that she was making the rounds, pleading with banks and private equity firms for a loan, but with little success. No one was foolish enough to bet on Mitchell Enterprises, a company clearly in its death throes. I was just wrapping up a final contract when my assistant reminded me about the evening's event, the annual charity gala. When I arrived, the ballroom was already packed with the city's elite. I spotted a familiar figure moving restlessly through the crowd. In our last life, with the infusion of cash from my family, Khloe and I had skipped this gala, too busy putting out fires at her company. This time, it seemed, she was out of options, hoping to find a savior among the philanthropists. I had barely taken my seat when several business partners came over to greet me. Khloe saw me, too. She hesitated for a moment before making her way over, a determined look on her face. Ethan, she said, her voice smooth, you look very handsome tonight. Of course he does, a voice sneered from behind her. It was Leo, tagging along like a shadow. He's been bathed in milk and honey since the day he was born. The money he spends on himself in a year is more than most people make in a lifetime. Must be nice. I could practically taste the acid in his words. I gave him a cold, dismissive look. I never understood the deep well of resentment he held for me. I used to let it slide for the sake of our childhood connection, but not anymore. I can spend it because I can earn it, I said coolly, taking a slow sip of my wine, which is more than I can say for some people. I fixed my gaze on him. And another thing, you left with Khloe. You don't work for my family anymore. Stop calling me by my first name like we're old friends. We have no relationship whatsoever. Leo was struck dumb, his face flushing with anger. He could only glare at me, speechless. Khloe frowned, but, mindful of our surroundings, said nothing. The auction began soon after. The first few items were unremarkable, but I casually raised my paddle a few times. To my amusement, every time I placed a bid, Leo immediately countered with a higher one. I had a laugh. Well, Ms. Mitchell, your company must not be in such dire straits after all, I remarked dryly. You can certainly afford to let your boyfriend throw money around like this. She didn't even look at me, her eyes fixed on Leo with a doting expression. We're all here for charity, Ethan. Don't be so petty. I chuckled coldly and said nothing more. Then, the final item was presented. Khloe finally looked up, her attention fully on the stage. It was a simple, elegant gown, a vintage piece from the Gilded Age. The moment the auctioneer finished his introduction, Khloe shot her paddle into the air, calling out a high bid, a look of absolute determination on her face. Suddenly, I understood. I knew why she had fought so hard to be here tonight. That gown was an heirloom, a belonging of the late matriarch of the Chun family, one of the most powerful and private dynasties in the country. In the last life, whoever bought that dress used it as an inroad to a lucrative partnership with the Chun group, making a fortune. Khloe was planning to use the dress to latch onto the Chins and save her company. Too bad. This time I wanted it to. Without hesitation, I called out a higher price. Khloe stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief. Ethan, are you really going to bid against me for this dress? I smirked, echoing her own words back at her. We're all here for charity, Khloe. Don't be so petty. Leo, standing beside her, started muttering curses under his breath. But no matter how high Khloe bid, I calmly and consistently topped her. Finally, she reached her limit. Her composure shattered, and she spun towards me, her voice a desperate hiss. Ethan Grant, that dress is useless to you. Only I know its true value. And what makes you so sure I don't, Khloe? I countered, my voice low and steady. You want to get in with the Chun group. I'm sorry to disappoint you. But so does the Grant Corporation. Khloe froze, the color draining from her face. A tremor of panic flickered in her eyes, and her voice shook. Ow! How did you know? She stared at me, a wild, dawning horror in her expression. Ethan, did you come back too? I kept my face a placid mask, sidestepping the question. I'd forgotten she had no idea I was reborn as well. My knowledge of the dress was an unforced error, a crack in my facade. But I had no intention of admitting anything. A cold, mocking smile spread across my lips. Is it really that hard to believe? The Grant Corporation is a global enterprise. We hear things. Some opportunities aren't just whispered in your ear, Khloe. Despite my explanation, her eyes remained filled with suspicion. She knew me too well to believe it. In our last life, I'd been completely oblivious to this opportunity, and someone else had reaped the rewards. There was no logical reason for me to know about it this time. To shut down her line of questioning, I deliberately provoked her. Your turn to bid, Ms. Mitchell. If you don't, the dress is mine. Khloe said nothing. She gave me one last, indecipherable look, her lips pressed into a thin, hard line, and then turned and walked out of the ballroom. She left so abruptly, she didn't even wait for Leo, who scrambled to catch up, calling her name to no effect. With her gone, I easily won the dress. Later that night, after the gala, my driver dropped me off at my penthouse. As I walked towards the entrance, a figure stepped out of the shadows and grabbed my arm. The grip was shockingly tight. Reacting on pure instinct, I spun around and slapped her. Khloe, are you insane? I yelled, shaking my stinging hand. Do you know how much that hurt? She just stood there, stunned, her hand pressed her cheek. She looked utterly wrecked. Her hair was a mess from the wind, and her coat was damp, as if she'd been caught in a light rain. It made her look pathetic. Ethan, she whispered, her voice trembling. In our last life, you never would have done that. You never would have hit me. It was true. The old me would have been incapable of it. The old me, seeing her standing there so lost and vulnerable, would have pulled her into a hug and forgiven her everything. I was at my core a traditional man. My wife, Khloe, had been my entire world. I loved her, and I couldn't bear to see her suffer in the slightest. I would drive to her office with an umbrella and a drizzle, just in case. Thinking back on it now, it only proved the old saying, the purest love is often the cheapest. I rubbed the sore spot on my arm where she'd grabbed me and looked at her coldly. I have no idea what you're talking about. If you're going to have a breakdown, Ms. Mitchell, please do it somewhere else. I'm not entertaining guests. I tried to push past her, but she grabbed my wrist again. Her eyes were wide, her voice rising to a hysterical shriek. Stop pretending. You can't fool me, she cried. We were married for 40 years. I know exactly what you look like when you lie. I thought I was completely over her. But hearing her say those words, 40 years, stirred something deep inside me, a maelstrom of buried emotions. Even so, I wouldn't admit a thing. I yanked my hand away. 40 years? You need to get help? I sneered, tapping my temple with my finger. Did you forget who your fiancé is? It's Leo Vance. You chose him, remember? If your memory is that shot, maybe you should see a neurologist. Don't come here and cause a scene. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a low growl. And don't think this little act is going to make me give you the dress from a gala. Business is business. Sentiment has no place in it. With that, I pushed her aside and went inside, locking the door behind me. Through the thick wood, I could faintly hear her muttering to herself, her voice filled with a desperate, confused uncertainty. Could I really be wrong? No, it can't be. If Ethan didn't come back, this is all too much of a coincidence. Ethan, you just wait. I'll expose you. I'll make you admit who you are. I paid no mind to Khloe's unhinged ramblings. Even if she knew, what did it matter? As long as I denied it, she had nothing. A few days later, on behalf of the Grant Corporation, I reached out to the Chun Group. To my surprise, the person they sent to meet with me was none other than the heiress herself, Audrey Chun. In my past life, she was something of an icon to me. Not only had she built the Chun Group into the nation's top conglomerate, but she had also dominated the international market. That evening, I received a text from Audrey. She had booked a table at a private restaurant and invited me to dinner. When I arrived, I was startled to see Khloe across the room. She was dining with a group of potential investors, clearly pursuing another lifeline for her company. "See someone you know, Mr. Grant?" Audrey asked, noticing my distraction. Her voice was calm and low, pulling me back to the present. I gave her an apologetic smile. "Sorry, I thought I did. My mistake." Audrey didn't press the issue, simply leading the way to our table. I followed close behind, completely unaware of Khloe's eyes burning into my back. We were seated at the best table in the house, with a stunning view of the city skyline. Soon, a parade of dishes filled the table. "I wasn't sure of your preferences, so I ordered a little of everything," Audrey explained. I was flattered. Over dinner, Audrey proved to be an excellent conversationalist, sharing amusing anecdotes from the business world and speaking fondly of her great-grandmother, the original owner of the dress. I found myself completely captivated. When the main courses arrived, I fell into old habits, a rhythm ingrained over 4 decades. I had a bowl of clear soup before the meal, then a small portion of rice, and finished by mixing the last of my soup with the rest of the rice. It was a terrible habit I'd picked up from Khloe. Her stomach was sensitive, and she often ate her rice this way. Over time, I'd unconsciously adopted the same bad practice. "You know," Audrey said gently, "eating rice soaked in soup like that isn't great for your digestion. You might want to cut back." My head snapped up. My gaze instinctively shot over to Khloe's table, and my eyes met hers. A flash of nostalgic delight lit up her face. It felt like a chain I needed to break. "You're right," I said to Audrey, my voice firm. "This is a bad habit I need to get rid of." Without another thought, I picked up my bowl and dumped the soupy rice into a nearby waste receptacle. From the corner of my eye, I saw the light in Khloe's expression shatter. Having dealt with that, I turned back to Audrey, who placed a piece of carrot on my plate. "Carrots are great for your skin. You should have some." Just as she said it, Khloe appeared at our table, unable to restrain herself any longer. She looked at me, her voice filled with a faux intimacy. "Ethan, you hate carrots. You don't have to eat that." But I'd already picked up the piece with my fork and put it in my mouth, chewing thoughtfully. "What a coincidence seeing you here, Ms. Mitchell," I said, my tone breezy, "but we don't know each other well. It's perfectly normal that you wouldn't know what I like to eat." I turned to Audrey with a charming smile. "Actually, I love carrots. I was born in the year of the rabbit, after all." The line made Audrey laugh, a soft, genuine sound. She placed another piece of carrot on my plate. I ate it without hesitation. It was strange. For 40 years, I despised them. Now they didn't taste so bad. Seeing Khloe just standing there, frozen, Audrey asked, "Is this a friend of yours, Mr. Grant? Should we add a chair?" I didn't hesitate for a second, my mouth still half full. "Not a friend. A business associate at most." The words hit Khloe like a physical blow. Her mouth hung open, but no sound came out. She stood there, frozen, pure terror washing over her face, erasing the desperate hope that had been there moments before. "Impossible," she muttered, shaking her head. "Ethan, you wouldn't treat me like this. And you would never, ever eat carrots." Khloe's interruption did little to spoil the rest of my dinner with Audrey. I didn't spare her another glance for the rest of the meal. When we were finished, I felt pleasantly full. I declined Audrey's offer of a ride, deciding a slow walk home would do me good. To my surprise, she offered to walk with me. On the way, we passed through a neighborhood bustling with food trucks. My stomach was full, but my eyes were hungry. I swallowed hard, a fact Audrey didn't miss. She laughed and pulled me towards the lights and smells. At my suggestion, we picked up a few things from different vendors. I tried to restrain myself, but we still ended up with a small feast. In the end, I could only manage a few bites of each item. Without a word, Audrey started finishing my leftovers, even taking a few bites from the half-eaten gyro I was holding. I felt a sudden rush of heat to my face. You should probably just throw that away," I stammered. "It's not very sanitary." I thought I heard a soft chuckle. "A handsome man like you, Mr. Grant?" I'm sure your leftovers are perfectly clean, she teased. We could probably auction them off for a fortune. Her playful comment made me blush even harder, and I quickened my pace home. A long shower barely managed to cool the strange fluttering in my chest. I had just gotten into bed when my phone rang. Ethan? It's Lindsay. Can you come to the bar? Chloe's really drunk. She's asking for you to pick her up. I knew Lindsay. She was a mutual acquaintance from our social circle. I didn't mince words. Lindsay, you know perfectly well who her fiancé is. That's a call you should be making to Leo Vance, not me, I said flatly. If Chloe's drunk, let Leo take care of her. I'm sure that's what she really wants. Before I could finish, I heard Chloe's voice, raw and desperate, screaming in the background. Ethan, I want you. I only want you to come get me. It's been so long since you made me your hangover soup. In our past life, whenever Khloe had a work event with heavy drinking, I'd always have a pot of my special restorative broth waiting for her when she got home. 40 years like clockwork. Never missed a single time. Ms. Mitchell, you're clearly drunk. I have no idea how to make soup, I said coldly. Lindsay, I'm texting you Leo's number. You can contact him yourself. I hung up before Khloe could start screaming again. But she was relentless. A little while later, a furious banging echoed through my apartment. Supported by Lindsay, Khloe was swaying drunkenly at my door. I tried to ignore it, but the noise was incessant, and I could hear my neighbor starting to complain. The moment I opened the door, Khloe, her eyes red and swollen, stumbled forward and collapsed onto the floor in front of me. I did nothing. I simply took a step back, creating distance. She looked up at me in disbelief, her lips trembling. Ethan, she whispered, her voice cracking. You won't even help me up? You're just going to watch me fall. What did you expect? I told you. We have nothing to do with each other. I crossed my arms, my expression impassive. If that's all you came here to say, you can leave now. My coldness seemed to finally break her. Her face went pale. Ethan, after 40 years of us, can you really be this cruel? I let out a short, sharp laugh. 40 years? Ms. Mitchell, you must be hallucinating. I'm not even 30 yet. What 40 years are you talking about? Instead of indulging in these fantasies, you should probably be more concerned with how you're going to save Mitchell Enterprises. Her gaze was heavy, unfocused. Even if you won't admit it, you can't fool me, she slurred, her words thick with alcohol and sorrow. The way you ate dinner tonight, it was exactly the same as last life. Soup first, then rice, then soup mixed with rice. The food you bought from the trucks. Those were all our old favorite spots, the gyro with extra hot sauce. And you always took a shower the second you got home from that street, complaining about the smell of grilled meat clinging to your clothes. She recited a litany of details, of complaints and habits from our shared past. Things I had long forgotten, but she, somehow, remembered. It didn't matter anymore. Just then, Leo, whom I'd called, arrived. He rushed forward and pulled Khloe to her feet, shielding her from me as if I were a threat. I waved a dismissive hand, my face a mask of disgust. Get out of my building. Both of you. After that night, I thought Khloe would finally give up. Instead, she began to pursue me with a relentless, desperate energy. Flowers arrived at my office daily. Cases of my favorite bourbon. Tickets to a symphony I had mentioned wanting to see decades ago in our past life. A concert we'd never managed to attend. She was waiting for me outside my building at the end of the workday. Ever since I'd instructed security to bar her from the premises, she had taken to standing vigil on the sidewalk. The moment she saw me, she rushed forward. Ethan, this concert. You wanted to go for decades. Let's go together now. Let's finally do it. I had never felt such a profound sense of revulsion for another person. She was like gum stuck to the bottom of my shoe. I was about to unleash a torrent of fury when a sleek, black Maybach purred to a stop in front of us. The window rolled down, and Audrey Chin smiled out at me, holding 2 tickets. Mr. Grant, she said, her voice smooth as silk. I hear this performance is one of a kind. I was wondering if you might be free to join me for a musical feast tonight. Without a second of hesitation, I opened the passenger door and slid in beside her. A look of pure terror crossed Chloe's face. She started banging on the window. Ethan, you can't. I asked you first. Don't go, please. Just give me one more chance. The car pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, I could see Khloe running after us, a desperate, frantic sprint, her mouth moving, shouting words lost to the engine's hum. Audrey glanced in the mirror, a sigh escaping her lips. You certainly have a powerful effect on people, Mr. Grant, to make the CEO of Mitchell Enterprises behave so recklessly. Chasing a moving car is incredibly dangerous. A sudden, reckless impulse took over me. I haven't seen you do anything crazy for me yet, Ms. Chun, I said before I could stop myself. The car fell silent. I instantly regretted my impulsive words. In the mirror, I saw Khloe stumble and fall, rolling hard on the pavement. Then the car turned a corner, and she was gone. After that fiasco, Khloe finally stopped contacting me. Audrey, too, seemed to disappear for a while. Then, unexpectedly, Leo Vance asked to meet me at a coffee shop. His hostility was a palpable thing, radiating across the small table. Ethan Grant, you're the heir to a fortune. You have everything, he began, his voice dripping with resentment. Why can't you just leave Khloe alone? She chose me. Can't you just let her go? I took a calm sip of my coffee. I couldn't believe his audacity. You should be saying this to Khloe, not me. If you could convince her to stop harassing me, I would be eternally grateful. My sarcastic reply finally made him snap. He slammed his cup down, jealousy twisting his features into an ugly mask. She only bothers you because of who you are, because of your money. The person she loves is me, not some soulless corporate suit like you. I pressed my tongue to the roof of my mouth, a cold, mirthless smile playing on my lips. I finally understood his deep-seated animosity. It was pure insecurity. He was terrified Khloe would regret her choice and come back to me. So you deliberately ate peanuts to fake an allergic reaction and make me look like the bad guy, I stated, my voice dangerously quiet. And when I came to the hospital, you put on that pathetic little show to win her sympathy. My eyes narrowed. Leo, I thought of you as a brother, and you spent all this time plotting to frame me. He wasn't ashamed. He looked proud. So what if I did? As long as Khloe loves me, I'll do whatever it takes. Is that right? So you played me for a fool. The voice was not mine. It was cold, sharp, and familiar. Leo whipped his head around, and the color drained from his face. Khloe was standing right behind him, her expression glacial, her mouth twisted in a snarl of fury and disgust. It was all a lie. She swayed on her feet, as if the weight of the revelation was too much to bear. The memory of the cruel, cutting words she had thrown at me because of his deception must have flooded back, and she bit her lip so hard I was sure it would bleed. I was such an idiot, she whispered, her voice cracking. For a man like you, I threw away the person who loved me unconditionally for an entire lifetime. Her eyes were shattered, completely devoid of light. I sighed, pushed my chair back, and walked past them, out of the coffee shop, leaving them to their wreckage. This time, Khloe had no ground left to stand on, no way to try and win me back. Faintly, I heard Leo's desperate, pleading voice. Khloe, believe me, it was only because I love you so much. I was scared of losing you. You always had Ethan in your eyes, but you're supposed to be mine. Only mine. I didn't see Khloe for a long time after that. I'd hear snippets of news about her at industry events. She fought tooth and nail to save Mitchell Enterprises, but without my help, it was a losing battle. The company eventually filed for bankruptcy. With no money left, Leo's declarations of undying love vanished. He embezzled what little was left and tried to flee, but Khloe reported him to the police. He was sent to prison. Years later, Audrey and I were married. One afternoon, while I was accompanying her to a prenatal checkup, I saw her. Khloe. She looked disheveled, her eyes wild and unfocused. She saw me, too, and her gaze dropped to Audrey's swollen belly. In that instant, she seemed to break into a million pieces. Tears streamed down her face as she mumbled to herself, though her words were meant for me. Ethan, this time, why did you let me go? Why didn't you save me? Ethan, you came back. Why didn't you tell me? Ethan, please. Just give me one more chance. Forgive me, please. I sighed and walked over to her. How did you know we'd be reborn? I asked quietly. She looked at me with a hollow, vacant stare. It was fate, I guess. I don't know. If I could do it all over again, I'd hold on to you so tightly. I'd never, ever let you go. A pair of orderlies came down the hall and gently but firmly escorted her back to her room. As they led her away, I heard one of them mention increasing her medication to manage her condition. Audrey came out then, holding a bottle of prenatal vitamins, and took my arm carefully. What are you looking at so intently? I shook my head, a real smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. Nothing. I was just thinking about when you'd be done. I missed you. Audrey's face lit up, a brilliant, radiant smile that could outshine the sun. She looked at me with an expression of such profound love, it felt like she would give me the whole world if I asked. For the next several decades, she did.